I'd like to call this meeting to order, this regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, September 18th. The clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Wolcott.
Here.
Vice Mayor Remley.
Here.
Councilmember Duffy.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Tandy.
Here.
Councilmember Hayden.
Here.
Councilmember Winters.
Here.
Thank you.
Leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight are students from Arizona Charter Academy's ACA Leadership class. So all please rise and join them in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move right into the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have three short items, but first of all, I'd like to introduce Mike Cassidy, our Youth Services Administrator, who's going to introduce some very special guests from the Arizona Charter Academy. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Madam Mayor, members of the council, it's my pleasure to be here again this evening, as it is for every city council meeting, to introduce some very special guests that we have with us tonight. They are students from Arizona Charter Academy's leadership class. The students are joined here tonight by teacher Mrs. Michelle Miller. And now I'd like to ask if Mrs. Miller would please stand to be recognized. Okay, where was I? Okay, and at this time, I'd like to invite students Maya Mendoza, Rogelio Torres, and Saul Ballardo to the podium to share a few words about their school.
Hi, my name's Rogelio Torres. Hello, we are here. We are ACA's leadership class at Arizona Charter Academy. This year, our ACA leadership class is working as a team to create and plan events and school activities to ensure our school's culture.
Hi, my name is Saul. We plan out assemblies, spirit weeks, dances, and school-wide events. Our goal is to create a safe and fun environment where students and teachers can create memories. One thing we are proud of this year is implementing our bully prevention program.
Hello, I'm Maya Mendoza. We have teamed up with Kenny Dobbs and Gary Smith to implement the Bully Radar app that allows students to anonymously report bullying on campus. We can also report on the positive as well. Eliminating bullying on our campus is one of the leadership's goals for this year. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this council meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Good job.
While everybody is, if there's parents in the audience, please feel free to step up and take pictures if you'd like. Don't be shy.
Moms, dads?
Thank you.
Any other moms and dads? No?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming and joining us this evening in the meeting. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Okay, Madam Mayor, second item is, and I hope everyone will join me in congratulating Andrea Davis, who was last week named by City Manager Bob Wingenroth as our permanent finance director. As you all know, she was appointed in the interim position at the beginning of the summer, and clearly her ability shone through over the summer, and Bob thought it was appropriate, and I certainly concurred, to make Andrea permanent in that position. It was effective last Monday on July the 10th. So please join me in congratulating her. Thank you. And lastly, there's an item coming up on the consent agenda in just a moment. But before we get to that, I know that Donna Miller wanted to bring up someone very special to our community from Friends of the Surprise Libraries and make a little presentation. So with that, I'll hand it off to Donna.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I have with us tonight Allison Klein. She's the president of Friends of Surprise Libraries. So if you, they've graciously agreed to donate $15,000 again this year so that we can continue with the Saturday hours at Hollyhock Library. If you recall, last year we did receive $15,000 to offer those hours, and since then we've seen a huge increase in our participation, about 50%. So we're very happy to continue this partnership, and we want to thank you. She does have a check here to present to Mayor and Council. It's a big check. So if you could please come on down, unless you want to say a couple words first. We'd like a photo out.
Not through the chair.
We'll let you have a couple of words.
Just a couple words for 15,000. Cool. Mayor and council, thank you for letting us be here. Friends is a nonprofit, local nonprofit organization that has been supporting libraries and the community's literacy focus since 2001. Working with city staff, Friends has been able to contribute $15,000 in 2017 and 2018 to support keeping the Hollyhock Library open and supporting that community. I know that it impacts you, Mayor Remley. This donation has resulted in twice the normal use of that library. They started with one bilingual story time on Saturday and has increased to a second requested bilingual story time. Children's brains develop at 90% by age 5. Reading to children increases their vocabulary, which improves their scholastic abilities. Better educated students equal better educated workers, which gives us a better economy in Surprise. Thank you for this opportunity to partner with the City of Surprise and with your Community Recreation Services Department.
Thank you, Allie. And I know I speak on behalf of the whole council when we extend our gratitude to you and your organization for the work that you've done in expanding the library service hours, particularly in the original town site library. This is a big deal. I remember many of us saw that library as a tremendous jewel that wasn't properly used. And because of the Saturday hours, it's really made a huge difference in the lives of these kids. So you do that for all of the kids around the City of Surprise, and we are so thrilled. Our library is the pride of the city. We are just so thrilled. And so these are very important gathering places. I know that Vice Mayor Remley is very moved by your generosity and your involvement in the community for children's literacy, and we just can't thank you enough. And Vice Mayor, thank you. So, Council, you want to come down and join her for a presentation of the check? A big check.
Hello. Long time no see. Here, we'll bring you up here because your shoulders all under tall. Yes, you're under tall.
There we go.
All right, I can stand in front of him. All right. All right, you're Thank you. Thank you. Want to do more? I want to do more. Just let me know how, okay? All right.
Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, we'll move right into the City Attorney's report.
None tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
City Clerk's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We have, for the general election coming up, we have some important dates. Voter registration closes on October 8th, and anyone that's on the permanent early voter list will start receiving their ballots. They'll be mailed out starting on October 11th and 12th. City Hall will be a drop-off ballot location, of course, through that whole entire early voting period. And then we'll have our schedule coming up for early voting here at City Hall. As soon as I get that information clarified, I'll be able to send that out to everyone. And general election day is Tuesday, November 6th.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone for call to the public?
Yes, we have Dwayne Farrell.
Mr. Farrell, if you would just identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name's Dwayne Farrell. I'm a citizen here in Surprise. I was called earlier this week, and please excuse me for this being informal or not having everything written down or correct. I just got off of work. I was told earlier this week when I called in and I spoke to one of the representatives that today would be talking about the implementation of the new cell phone law and its fines. I wanted to come down and speak my piece on that behalf. I was told that there wasn't anybody speaking against it, so I wanted to be one of those people speaking against it. I am from California originally, and I've seen how these certain laws without victims can be used in different ways. They can protect people, obviously. In other ways, they can't. Anyways, I should have written something down, obviously, but I really think that we're pushing this fine a little heavy. And I think the people that it will affect are young people who obviously use the phones quite a bit, and those who work. I happen to own a landscaping business. I do a lot of driving. I use my GPS and my navigation daily, Bluetooth, batteries, so on and so forth. They fail quite often. I find myself constantly in situations just in this last week or two since I've heard about this law being implemented, picking up my phone, looking around to see if there's an officer watching, waiting to pull me over. I know that sounds funny, but $250 a fine, how much of your day are you willing to give up? Now, I don't know what you guys make for a living up there. And $250 is laughable to some people, but I know some, for example, my 19-year-old son, $250 would can his entire week worth of work. Just to make a quick little story here, I happen to be one of those children myself who was hit with not having insurance when I was 16. That was right around the time it was mandatory, just became mandatory to have. On top of needing to drive for a living, this, that, I ended up collecting $6,700 in fines and couldn't get my license until I was 21 because of this small thing. I'm just one of those people who are against advocating making any more laws for possible victims. We've got enough possible victims out there. I mean, if we're going to continue to do this, we might as well make a law you got to pay a fine every time you get in your car. I was driving down the street here just a couple of weeks ago, and when I was talking to Lydia, I used this example, but I do a lot of freeway driving, and I look over and I see a guy 75 miles an hour, and he's reading a novel on his steering wheel. I thought to myself, well, how safe must this be, Obviously, we take those type of responsibilities upon ourselves when we drive. If you are cognitive enough and you have the skill to do so, that's your choice. If you hurt somebody in the process, that's something you take upon yourself. As well as if you're caught doing so, I'm sure there's any extra liability that might be pushed upon you for doing such. I really think we should revert more back to that, because when we do that, we force the personal responsibility upon each person individually and not upon the collective as a whole to essentially look over everybody. That to me doesn't feel like a very free society. Like I said today, I got out of my car and about 4 different times my earpiece wouldn't connect to my phone. I looked over pretty quickly to make sure that I wasn't under the scrutinous eye of the law, because last thing I need is to be working for free. Like I said, I'm a landscaper, so my work is a bit more laborious than others, but I covet that $250 as well as my freedom to pick up my phone and make the choice on whether or not I am responsible enough to talk on the phone and drive. With that being said, I feel like I said my piece. My apologies.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else?
No, Mayor.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 8 items on this evening's consent agenda. Does any member of council wish to pull any item for further discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
We have
Move to
e-session
approve
minutes.
consent. Second.
A motion has been made.
E-session minutes.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes, that's okay.
Hold. There are e-session minutes.
E-session. Yep. Yep, that's right.
I'm sorry, who made the motion second? Motion? And
I made the motion, yeah.
He motioned it.
I
Okay,
motioned.
who seconded?
I will now. I'll second it. I just did.
Okay.
Okay.
If you've read the minutes, if you'll pass them back to the clerk. For the audience, these are minutes from our executive session and we approve them, but then we have to pass them back on because they are discrete. All right. So a motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented, including the executive committee minutes. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
That is a unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you.
So if we have a representative from Mule Creek Saloon, your item was approved. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to item 9.
Item 9, consideration and action pertaining to the Committee on Community Outreach, partnerships and grants recommendations for Surprise Community Outreach Program funding for fiscal year 2019.
Good evening, Seth.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The item before you tonight is overview of our community outreach, our Surprise Community Outreach Grant Program, which our council subcommittee on community outreach partnerships and grants just visited and met with last month. So again, for our residents at home and for everyone here, the program and purpose of this particular grant is to support our great nonprofit organizations that provide such critical services to our Surprise residents. Our Surprise Subcommittee on Community Outreach Partnerships and Grants makes the funding recommendations that are in front of you tonight. The subcommittee members are Vice Mayor Remley, Council members Roland Winter, and Council member Patrick Duffy, who's the chair of the subcommittee. The guidelines for the nonprofits, they must be at 501c3 status, must submit a new application every year in case they're repetitive. Events, programs, or activities must take place in the city of Surprise or benefit Surprise residents. So they have to demonstrate the money that they'll receive go to Surprise residents, even though they could be a regional nonprofit. Must include a proposed budget for use of funds. Reporting is required. Recipients will acknowledge grant award in the press release, so they must recognize the city of Surprise as a sponsor. Funds are provided on an invoice or reimbursement basis. Maximum amount is $10,000, and for this current year, the award was $65,000, but on the consent agenda just today, you approved $35,000 additional money into the Surprise Community Outreach Grant Program, which now gives us $100,000 to award local nonprofits. So on Thursday, August 16th, the subcommittee met and heard 23 applications and presentations and made funding recommendations. We had $179,000 worth of requests to the city. And here are the organizations and funding recommendations per the subcommittee. I'll go through each of them very quickly. The first agency, Benevilla, has a social service focus. They requested $5,000. Their recommendation was $2,000. Excuse me. I think this is the wrong slide here. That's the 65. 1 second. I'm going to have to give you, I think in my notes, I have the $100,000 requests, so I have to pull those up. Let me see if I have that. We loaded, I loaded 2 presentations, one for the 65 in case the consent. So let me grab that real quick. Nope,
the other one.
I don't think I have it. So do you have it? All right, thank you. If you just drop it into the P drive, okay. Sorry about this. That was the risk we took on a consent and a regular item. That's the $100,000. Okay, thank you, Jody. And I have to say thank you to Jody Tass and Deb Perry for coordinating all of this. So tonight, the recommendation for Benevilla, they asked for $5,000, just as it shows on the screen. And their funding recommendation award is $5,000. Radiant Church asked for $5,000 in support of social services. Their request is or their funding recommendation is $2,500. St. Vincent de Paul asked for $10,000, and their funding recommendation is $10,000. That's for utility services. Teen Life is a new applicant this year. They asked for $10,000. Their funding recommendation is for $5,000. Heart Pantry requested $6,000, and their funding recommendation is $4,000. Rotary Club of Surprise requested $10,000 in support of their Taste of Surprise event. Their funding recommendation is $5,000. Chance Shelter requested $4,000, and their funding recommendation is $4,000. Northwest Valley Connect requested $10,000, and their funding recommendation is $10,000. Youngtown Community Fund, which is a medical lending supply provider, requested $10,000, and their funding recommendation is $3,000. Special Olympics requested $3,500, and their funding recommendation is $2,600. One Step Beyond funding asked for $7,760. Their funding recommendation was $5,000. A New Leaf asked for $10,000 in funding recommendation to support their VITA tax prep services is $7,500. Lutheran Social Services asked for $10,000 to continue ongoing support and implementation of an iHelp program, and that funding recommendation is $7,200. West Valley Symphony requested $10,000 and is being recommended for funding at $2,000. Calvary Chapel 14-6 Church is looking to do a public event. They requested $10,000. Their funding recommendation is $2,500. Helping Families in Need, a nonprofit that helps families with cash assistance, food stamps. They requested $10,000, and the funding amount is $5,000 for the recommended award. Cancer Support Community of Arizona, a new applicant this year, requested $10,000. Their funding recommendation level is $5,000. Stepping Up for Seniors is a local nonprofit that helps seniors. They asked for $10,000. Their funding recommendation was $2,000. West Valley Arts Council requested $2,500 and is being recommended at $2,000. Launch Team Robotics, a local FIRST Robotics team out of the schools, but kind of a community-wide team, requested $3,340, and their funding recommendation is $2,700. Chicanos por la Casa, in support of parent and early childhood literacy, requested $8,438, and their funding recommendation is $3,000. Science the Earth, a brand new applicant this year, requested $3,840 to support and to promote STEM career pathways and knowledge. And they'd like to do workshops in the Surprise area. Their funding recommendation is $2,500. And finally, Stage Left Productions, a new nonprofit to Surprise, requested $10,000 in support of their arts and theater programs. Their funding recommendation is at $2,500. So I hope you had that on your screens in front of you, the correct amount. But that summarizes the overview of the subcommittee's funding recommendations.
Council members, did you have questions? Councilmember Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, Seth, I just want to say thanks to you, Deb Perry, and Jody for putting that all together, and everybody that applied and sat. That was a long morning, but there was some really good presentations, and I'm really glad we were able to go from 65 to 100, because that was way too hard to do with that first amount of money, and some people kind of saw it. So with the work, and it wasn't even that easy with 100. There was so many good things that are coming through. So I just, thank you very much. Thanks, Councilmember Winters, Vice Mayor Remley for being there that day. Thank you guys, and for Remley for wanting to move that up to 100. That was well worth it. And all of these are a huge bonus to this city. They are. So again, I just want to say thanks for doing this. All three of you, Deb, Jody, Seth, for putting that all together. And everybody that applied, again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Tandy.
Just a few quick comments. I didn't sit through on the committee this time, but I appreciate the committee's help in sorting this through because it is a big effort. I've got to do it a couple times, and it's hard because there's so much good to go through. And I also want to thank the people that applied for stepping up because they're doing so much in the community, and this is just a small piece to help them do a little bit more. And they can leverage what the city would cost the city a lot more to do this. The last comment is just to help you out a little bit. The numbers on the $100,000 is what is posted online on the agenda. So we're good to go there. So if anybody's trying to follow along at home, those numbers are there, and that's the numbers you read. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Councilmember Winters, did you have anything to say? No. All right, very good. Then I'll entertain a motion. This is actually a non-public hearing. This is an agendized for action.
I move to approve the funding recommendations contained in the Human Service and Community Vitality Staff Report as presented.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the Community Outreach Program funding for fiscal year 2019 as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you.
So the
Item
next-
10.
Item 10 is presentation and discussion pertaining to the City of Surprise Transit Study, draft transit lines and funding mechanisms.
Good evening, Martine.
Mayor, Council, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to stand here and to be able to discuss transit one more time with you. However, I do want to set the expectation. Last time I was up in front of you, I indicated that we might be moving forward with the motion. We actually decided to be able to propose to postpone that motion until October 2nd. We felt that there was enough questions from the council from last time that we wanted to be able to give council one more opportunity to be able to kind of get a good feel of what we were doing, as well as to be able to make sure that the public had an opportunity to be able to participate on our last public outreach event, which started at 4 o'clock. It's currently still going on. We've had some council individuals had the chance to be able to kind of catch in between the two sessions. We had a good touch feel event with the 2 buses outside, as well as with the option to be able to come inside and ask questions at the boards. And so that is still going on. From my understanding, from the messages I'm getting on my phone, we're still getting a good roll in from individuals. And so just know that that public outreach is still going on and individuals are still participating, and we're getting a good response. So I would like to go ahead and also introduce once again that we are here for the Transit Feasibility Study and Implementation Plan, which was asked by council for us to go ahead and move forward with. I know that you were kind of wondering what happened to HDR and our representation. We do have them here today. I have Jorge here with me. The rest of his staff is running the outreach portion of it. So we do have quite a few individuals here within the city building, but they are doing other duties as needed. So you are in capable hands. Jorge does know the data, as well as I'm also here for any questions that you might have. And so I'm going to go ahead and give Jorge the stage.
Good evening, Jorge. So nice to have you back.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you, Martin. Happy to be back here. Happy that it's a great event outside. Hopefully, if you can make it, please go check out the vehicles. Technical speak, we had a 40-foot vehicle outside, which is one of the 571 Expresses, for example, that connect the Bellbrook Park and Ride into downtown Phoenix. And there's also another flavor. It's I guess a minor grid route or a neighborhood circulator that you can call. That's from the city of Avondale. That's there. It's about a 35-foot vehicle. It's pretty neat. It's nice and fresh and air conditioned inside. So if you get the chance to go check it out. It's neat stuff. Real quick, just want to go through. You've seen some of the items in the presentation, and just wanted to set the stage here in the study purpose, which is what we heard from you, and the direction that was from council was, is there an interest of transit in Surprise? If so, what would transit look like? And if so, how much would it cost? And what are some of the next steps that need to be taken? So we took that message clearly. We started out with a very big study area, and we worked really hard in getting a lot of data and information, previous studies, existing conditions, feedback, and then looking at the future conditions, and mainly working, through the public involvement component, which is again happening still today. So with that, a lot of the information came in, and we had this preliminary transit network. And if you see in the map, sort of behind the thick lines, there's these light dashed purple lines, and that's actually feedback from individuals working on Wikimaps, designing their own transit system. So the feedback from the public, the feedback from the original survey, the feedback from the data that we got, we were able to piece together where transit makes sense right now to start off in the region, in the city, and then also places of interest. And those are the black boxes with the little stars that you see there. Those are the individuals that identified where they want to go in their transit system. So one of the questions that Martin shared with me was, well, what is the impact of transit? What will be the impact of transit that the city will see? And so there's twofold, right? There's a community component impact and, of course, an economic component impact to it. The first, we'll start off with just the community impact. Reduces vehicle emissions, of course, a few more people sharing the ride on a particular bus, less vehicles on the car, so which translates into fewer emissions. Improves traveler safety, and this is an interesting component. APTA recently came out with a study with the Vision Zero network that cities with transit their roads are safer. They have less collisions and fatalities on the roads for those that use transit. And that was the Vision Zero network that in partnership with APTA, the American Public Transportation Association. Increases physical activity, of course, reaching to the bus stop, walking to forth to make the transit trips. Increases overall mobility for an individual to, if there is a route connecting multiple cities. So now you can travel in between different cities to work, play, different destinations. It frees up time. I don't know if you've seen some of the, if you ever take an express into Phoenix, you could free up time and actually text on the bus and read on the bus and do whatever you feel to on those vehicles. And it promotes independence, as we saw on the previous slide, in just to provide independence for individuals, and then some congestion relief. Now, economic impacts. So the question was, well, what is the dollar component to it? And what this was not a particular major component of the study, but we did do some research in looking at the industry. We looked at the federal level, at the regional level, and then sort of what happens at the local level. At the transit industry level, this is from the American Public Transportation Association, and these are some facts that they have on their website. For every dollar invested in transit, generates four in economic returns, and this is at the industry level. 71% of public funding for public transportation flows to the private sector, then generating additional jobs for drivers, for mechanics, for maintenance of the staff that work on the vehicles. And then it was an interesting statistic at the national level. Home values perform 42% better when located near frequent transit. Now, on the federal component side, there are formula funds. I don't know if you're familiar, but any transit agency that receives a dollar of federal funding has to report back to the federal government. We moved X number of people a year. We provided X number of miles of service a year. So there's a laundry list of things that get reported back to the federal government. And then in return, the government uses a formula and distributes funding back to the transit agencies. And then in a way, the regions get funding for more of the service that you provide, the more people that you move, then the equation works to your benefit in getting additional service. And one of the interesting things to mention in the overall region, last statistic that I saw, about 20 of the metro regions that had transit, they were on the decline, but the Phoenix area, the metropolitan area, was actually one of the ones that was actually adding passengers, gaining ridership overall. And then at the same time, on the federal component side, they're competitive grants. They're grants that you compete against other agencies, other cities. There was recently a transit-oriented development grant. There's several grants out there, of course, to be able to look for funding for transit. So what does this help and assist on, these dollars that come back? They help on capital purchases, purchasing new vehicles, expansion of vehicles. It helps out in operating expenses in certain areas. You're able to use some funds from the federal government to pay a match for operations. And then planning at the same time, you could use some of these dollars for planning studies. Again, this is money that comes back to the region, spent in the region to do work for the region. And then on the right side of the screen, some of the services, goods and services that it supports. Again, rolling stock, construction of bus stops, maintenance, it pays for drivers, helps pay for drivers, fuels, tires, maintenance, so a laundry list of things. On the state funding side, there's the Arizona Lottery funds, and again, it can support several pieces of operation. And currently in Surprise, they're used to help provide and support Dial-A-Ride and Express Route currently in there. So there's the Arizona Lottery funds dedicated for transit, and they're used for transit because you have a need and you have a transit component. And then lastly, on the local funding impact, local funding supports, and I was doing some research, and of course, Buy Local Arizona, for example, you know, when you support and provide opportunities for individuals to use transit, income frees up. You know, now a transit pass, I was doing some research, I think AAA said an average $8,500 a year is sort of the average for owning a new vehicle. You know, if you either minimize that, or instead of owning two, you own one vehicle, you free up some of those dollars, and then those are additional incomes that could be reinvested on, you know, groceries, on entertainment, on, you know, there's different things, and then that has a multiplier effect. The one piece of information that I found, I think, was from the Florida Department of Transportation. They had a 1 to 2.3 multiplier. So for every dollar invested, sort of a 2.3 multiplier. That was more of a local study that was done on the FDOT for transit analysis. So you see there's a wide range, and there hasn't been a study completed here for transit overall, but there is some data that we were able to find in terms of that. The other component, though, that is tracked real closely is, for example, transit-oriented development along light rail. So that's constantly being tracked in the region. So, so that's sort of trying to answer the local, I guess the local funding or the local funding impact. You know, if an individual frees up disposable income, it could be reinvested somewhere else if they're able to use transit, or if they're able to provide get additional mobility options, just apart from owning their own vehicle. The other question that was asked was, you've seen this timeline before, and we have different phases for implementation. And the question was, well, what is sort of the timeline? How should things be implemented? And what we're providing as part of the recommendations of the plan, the research and the tasks that we were given, was a blueprint. So based on the data that we received, these are some of the routes that we recommend being implemented. And they could be implemented based on funding discussions, funding decisions, fleet availability, regional coordination. So what the plan will eventually show is just a guide, a roadmap for implementation, but there's additional discussions that need to happen to ensure, you know, which element goes first. So we've sequenced them out, but but in the end, it's going to be a coordinated effort, you know, with council, with neighbors, neighboring cities to implement. For example, we have the Bell Road route would be the first route that we are seeing some of the data to get implemented to actually have that service and roll out, connect from Arrowhead Mall on Bell Road to connect to Surprise. And then that route actually, if implemented, would travel from Surprise all the way to about Raintree in the Scottsdale area. So you could have potentially a one-seat ride from one end of the valley to the other. So, but right now that route ends at Arrowhead Mall, continuing west on Bell Road. So for example, in this case, the implementation, they consider it April of 2020 as a component, as an idea. So looking for a partial year's worth of funding from April to the end of July of that fiscal year to June 30th, to get the understanding of, you know, the component of costing transit, and gives sufficient time at the same time to look for the funding for the subsequent year. So, and that's one example. And then as funding becomes available, as coordination continues to happen, other elements of the plan could be brought forward in the sequence that we've identified. And of course, as ridership grows, you could adjust the system and continue moving down the selection list. And that's where I mentioned here, revisit the plan and select next improvement. So as the system starts growing, as funding becomes available, continue to expand the system and work with regional partners to then be able to coordinate schedules, coordinate transfers, coordinate vehicle need at the regional level, because it is a regional system that's out here. Next steps in terms of the study, as Martin was saying, study acceptance. And then eventually, after study acceptance, it's more of a policy conversation in terms of funding through the budget cycle, through permanent sources of funding, and then eventually programming, working with operators to get the improvements in line for operations. So with that concludes the presentation. Martin, did you want to add anything else?
So Mayor and Council, I just want to kind of touch back one more time. So this is just one of several steps that need to occur to ever even really implement transit in the region. This is basically the first step to be able to understand what transit needs we had, to be able to understand the desires, as well as then to be able to understand the full implications of those desires. With that being said, we still need to take future steps to be able to create a service plan, to be able to go out there to be able to see if we could get a service provider, if that was the desire of council, to be able to then at that point in time to be able to see what funding mechanism we could implement. And so there's multiple steps that will have to occur after this plan is accepted. And so by any means do I not want to give the false impression that this is it. This conversation is just but the start of a larger conversation that will need to occur. And I will be happy to come back at a future date within, a reasonable time to be able to have that discussion, whether either in a work session, whether it be in a regular city council session, to be able to answer any questions that you might have within that time frame. But just know that this is the first step that was actually initiated by council back in last October. And one of the things that we have had asked by various individuals is what is next? When is the next step? When's the next shoe going to fall? Things like that. And it's really hard and difficult to be able to let them know because we haven't had that frank conversation yet. And so I was just really happy that we've been able to get to this point because now when you actually get to see the draft plan that is coming up, and then you'll be able to have that opportunity to be able to accept that plan here, you'll be able to understand that this is just the starter. This is just almost the tease. This is the movie credit that came beforehand, and then now kind of the storyline. And so now the question is really, what would you like to do? And so now you have the information. And so, that harder discussion, we'll be happy to come back as staff to be able to kind of walk through those tough questions, as well as to kind of walk through the desires of council. And so I'm happy to stand here and answer any questions you may have, or let Jorge provide those answers if it's appropriate there.
Very good. And we'll start with Vice Mayor Remley.
Thank you, Mayor. Jorge, my question is for you. What size of a bus were you contemplating with that Bell Road route? Was that one of the circulators that you were talking about earlier?
Mayor, members of the council. That is a great question. Actually, it would be a 40-foot vehicle like the one that already travels along Bell Road connecting Scottsdale to Central Phoenix. So it would be the continuation of that vehicle,
Of that same vehicle?
Yeah. That would be the plan to minimize transfers.
Did you mention that? Did you mention a while ago that you brought some of these vehicles with you this evening?
Yes, Vice Mayor. We do have a 40-foot vehicle outside. We also have a 30-foot vehicle out there, and so you are able then to kind of, when you see those two vehicles in perspective to the Ottawa University's 15-passenger transit vehicle that's behind there, it's able to give you a perspective of the type of transit that we're speaking on, the scale of it, as well as the options of the different sizes of vehicles that are available to utilize.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Tandy.
Thank you. Can you go back to the first scenario, probably 2 slides back? 3, maybe, 2 slides back, yeah. So the next one.
Forward, you mean?
That right there. So one option the council going forward can consider is maybe starting that partial year for the route April 2020 through July 2020 or June 30th, 2020. Do we have an idea of how much that 3 months would ballpark cost to have that one route?
So that will be provided within, the actual plan. We do have that year worth of transit for each individual route outlined, and then it would just be a simple calculation. My suggestion would not be just to plan for 3 months, but to plan for 4 months worth of a program, because you never know what that 1 month of programming might, entail with the ADA ridership and other things that might come in. Yeah.
And once you start that, you've got to have a pretty good idea that you're probably going to follow on. I'm just bringing up so the council realizes that that budget's going to be programmed starting this January, just a few months away.
Well, this in this scenario, yes, it would be if that was the action that would be taken. So I would have to come back and have that kind of discussion with council. The reason why we put 2020 is because realistically, that's the earliest that we could really start anything because of trying to make sure that we coordinated with our regional partners. And so we were just giving you a best case scenario. And so the worst case scenario is we decide not to do anything for perpetuary and we would just never implement anything. The best case scenario would be April 20th.
It takes a long time, obviously, to develop a system like this. And I appreciate your words about thinking this is it, because I remember back in 2010 when I was on the MAG and they had just completed the commuter rail study. And some of the council members from other cities thought, this is it, we're ready to go. And no, we're not on the 10-yard line ready to make a touchdown. And today, you see where we are. We're no further along in terms of the commuter rail piece. But that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate the depth that you went into with this study to really look at the needs that are totally focused on the city of Surprise. We are at the end of the line. We are at the northwest edge. And what we find now is that the region's transit system drops our customers off at the front door, and then you're on your own. So it's very important for us to really have a full understanding. I often have said, and Councilmember Hall, I think, agrees with me, you cannot launch a transit system too soon. If you do it too soon, you will kill any opportunity for success. So thank you for the depth of investigation that you've taken this study. And I think the council has a lot to talk about. We are really focused on trying to provide the best level of service for our community that we can manage in our budget and try to figure out how we can move the ball forward. So you've done a great service to all of us. And frankly, I think you've done a great piece of leadership for the Northwest Valley and all of the West Valley as we move into the next phase and iteration of investment in transportation in the entire valley in Prop 500. So thank you.
Mayor. I appreciate it. Once again, we look forward to coming back to have this plan accepted here on October 2nd. Once again, the acceptance does not initiate any transit line. It's just the acceptance of the actual document that we've completed our work, and it helps to establish in the region a working document for the Northwest Valley, or really for the city of Surprise.
Very good. Councilmember Hall, you had a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a quick comment. Martine, is there a way to get participation in a demonstration project funding?
Oh, so okay, I understand what you're saying. We can reach out and fill with our regional partners what those options may be, and that's part of the future discussion. Yes.
Okay.
So that yes, we would have to engage with our regional partners and then bring that information back to council for that implementation of a pilot program.
Okay. And then the next phase would be after we've demonstrated effective demand and ridership, then we could really start bringing partners on. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, and that was part of almost of the best case scenario of proving up which route we would want to do, because you don't want to do a pilot program on something that's going to die on the vine.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
we want to bring our best foot forward if we ever try to do a pilot program. So that was part of the study to kind of visually see what would succeed and what type of service would succeed. So whether it's what type of line route or neighborhood route or expanded ADA or expanded express or expanded, cab service, what would that would look like. And so, once council asked for what type of pilot, we could say, okay, what type of pilot are you looking for? And then I can look for regional partners to be able to see if there was something there available.
Very good. Thank you. We have another follow-up from Vice Mayor.
Martine, I think, for the person that's hearing this for the first time, they're going, wow, what is this? And this is not our first time to hear of this study. So the last time that you were presenting, I think you said that the way we were looking at doing it is phasing in where it was going to be minimal cost to us, where we were going to be putting basically the whole bill for that bus. And then as we pulled in our regional partners from the other cities, Peoria, et cetera, that would give us some momentum, and then we would be able to qualify possibly for this other money at the other level, even higher, so that we could expand that system and go. Was that kind of what our plan was as a phased-in approach?
Vice Mayor, Mayor, Council, yes, my suggestion would be if we move forward with anything to try to proof up the pudding, trying to make sure that we had the best data possible, not only empirically in the sense of what our plan showed, but actually physically in the sense of actual riders in seats per miles, and to be able then at that point in time show them that we did have the desire to be able to provide a transit service that was not only feasible, but that was something that we would be able to grow. And so I think for any new transit service, that's the hardest thing to be able to do, is to be able to show ridership, especially when you're starting a brand new service. For any federal grants, for any new start transit service, the first thing they ask you is, where's the study that shows that ridership could be feasible, which we have done. Have you done any actual outreach, which we've done? And have you followed any federal regs, which we've done? And then the last thing is, where's your pilot? Where's the mileage with the report of actual riderships? And we haven't done that yet because we haven't chosen a route yet, and we haven't kind of moved that step. So that's a future step. But to be able to get any large support, not only within the region and not only within the state, but on a federal standpoint, we have to take those steps. And so we've taken actually the harder steps right now, because we've done everything above board, and in the sense of the amount of public outreach we've done, the amount of data that we've taken in, the amount of understanding. So that way, when we do get ready to do something, if that's the will of the council, we're able to take that first step and make sure that it's on firm ground. And so, yes, you are correct, Vice Mayor.
And that's the homework that we've done. And I think everybody realizes that the money that used to come from Washington is not quite flowing the way it used to put it politely. And I think there's a complete flip around about 80-20. It used to be 80-20 federal, 80-20 local match. And there's an effort to try to eventually phase into the complete reverse, where it's 80% local and 20 match. So those of you who have already got a transit system, congratulations, you got 80% federal money. So that's why it makes just yet another challenge for us to kind of take that next step. And it's so critically important that we get our homework done, and you've done a great job. So thank you both for the work that you've done.
Thank you, Mayor.
Bringing this forward. Thank you. And if we get out of here early enough, there might be buses still out there for us.
There might still be buses out there.
Okay,
Yes.
that'd be great.
Mayor,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we do have a speaker.
All right.
And so it is Lori Cosmo. And then we have the one letter to read into the record.
Oh, yes. Okay. Good evening, and if you would just identify yourself for the record.
Lori Cosmo. Hold on just a second. My husband wrote some notes. He's not here. He's out of town. So I met with Dave in the transportation room earlier, so I had a few questions answered. My husband, unreliable service. In November,
Would it be possible to step forward a little bit closer to the microphone? There you go.
There we go. Sorry. In November, mid-November, I was diagnosed with cancer. My first treatment was on a Monday, and I had called Dial-A-Ride. I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I called them, and they said, sorry, we're not coming to get you. So I had to call my husband, who works downtown Phoenix, and he raced like chicken with his head cut off to get to me so I can get to my appointment. That same thing happened 3 times that same week. So basically, my husband basically used all his sick time and all his vacation time to get me to and from, my radiation, which was 5 days a week, and my chemo. Thank you. So basically, that was my life. And recently, they think they got the whole tumor, so I only have to go every 3 months now. God willing, it'll stay that way. But just the transportation issue here, starting October 1st, maybe it'll be better, but I don't have high hopes. It's just the unreliability of it. Insufficient resources. I'm just reading what my husband wrote. Unrealistic restrictions on scheduling. Poor interface with other Valley services, in and out of Surprise, which one of my doctors is Mayo Clinic. How am I going to get there? My husband has been out of town, so he can't drive me. How am I supposed to get there? It's just the transportation, problems here are real. We need to, try to fix them, hopefully. So anything, but these two nice gentlemen and Dave, answered a few questions, and hopefully it'll get better, and I've got high hopes.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming forward. First of all, congratulations on your reports. And we're all going to be hoping for you.
Thank you.
As we have heard this story so many times, and we recognize what a mess it is.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to address that. It's really sad that it's impacted people's lives the way it has.
Yeah.
We had hoped for the exact opposite, that it would actually help people get to those appointments quickly and on time and efficiently. So that's our goal. As a council, we are committed to making certain that this service works. The service that we're talking about tonight is far more extensive than the Dial-A-Ride program. But first things first, we need to fix the Dial-A-Ride situation, and hopefully we can get you to Mayo Clinic one of these days. Would be nice. And hopefully you won't have to even use it soon.
God willing.
That would be wonderful. So, but thank you for your input. Do appreciate that.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, Lori. All right. Anyone else?
So the written statement, and so please bear with me. It's a little lengthy and it's very small print. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is from Renee Townsend, a resident of Surprise. She says, I'm not able to attend the city meeting tonight because of health issues. However, I want to share that my family and I just moved from 35th Avenue and between Dunlap and Northern. I know that you are talking about putting in the transit system, and while I do believe in community outreach, I used to be a volunteer, and there are some concerns. The transit system could bring some things to this beautiful, wonderful city. Our old road on 35th Avenue was a bus stop in front of their home. We encountered crimes that comes with the transit system. Spray paint, public drunkenness when the bus ran till the evening, which I believe it was about 9 p.m. Sometimes it would go into the neighborhood. There was a bus stop outside of Cortez Park, and we stopped bringing our kids there. When you would drive by there, I don't know if it's still the same, but last year it had nothing but crime. It's only been a year since we've lived here in Surprise, but I'm sure if you took a drive down 35th Avenue in Dunlap, you would see for yourself it's probably the same. I seriously doubt, and it's changed over there and within the past few years. We lived there for 23 years. Also, it's been in the news for Arizona that people are also complaining about the Phoenix rail system and the crime that is brought into the neighborhoods around Sunny Slope. Sure, every neighborhood has crime, but it seems from my experience and from what I've read elsewhere here in Arizona from other people, the transit system brings unwanted crime. We moved close to the white tanks. We were aware of where we were moving and how far out we were moving. We wanted to move to Surprise to get away from all that. I understand the need for transportation for people who don't have a car. I used to take the Phoenix bus system, and trust me, it was horrible. I was more stressed out about taking the bus home than it was about bad bosses. I say this in a sarcastic, jokingly manner, however, it was true. We just moved from a neighborhood that had the Phoenix transit system that brought a lot of outside crime. Let's see here. I think that's a repeat of this section. I know this is a hard decision, but I also hope that all of you make the rules, consider how you go about doing this. If you do not go ahead with the transit system, I hope you'll keep in mind that people who moved out to Surprise wanted to get away from the big city crime. We're not rich or anything, but we just want a good life for our kids. We don't want to see having to move again in another 20 years because of a decision that brought in more crime. I wish the best of luck to all of you, and thank you for reading this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right, that is the end of the feedback from the public. And so that's our last regular agenda item. And so ask if there's any future agenda item.
Number 11?
Oh, sorry. I totally skipped past. All right, that one, the important one.
So item number 11, consideration and action pertaining to approval of a First Amendment to the city manager employment agreement.
They start off here.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council.
I didn't really forget you. I didn't look down and see Bob there, and so I don't know. it just blew past me.
Mayor, I'm going to kick it off.
Okay. Certainly, Council Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the mayor appointed me as chairman of the Performance Evaluation Committee, and Councilman Duffy and I were honored to do that with our city attorney and city clerk and city manager. And we reviewed their goals. We talked about their performance a little bit, not much, but a little bit, because we wanted to wait for the E-session so that the rest of the council could really, we got feedback from the council before that, but in the E-session, we went over some specifics on their performance. And after that, Councilman Duffy and I both felt like we were doing a pretty good job in compensation with the city clerk and the city attorney in terms of competitive. But we wanted the Human Resource Department to look at our city manager and see how he compared with other cities in Maricopa County and the West Valley specifically. So HR director did that, and that's what he's going to present to us tonight.
Thank you very much, Councilman Hall. Madam Chair, members of council, as introduced by Councilmember Hall, I have a short presentation for you on the information that we obtained for this compensation market analysis for the position of city manager. First, just some brief overview. Historically, the original employment agreement for the city manager was approved in September of 2014. And since that time, there's been no market analysis or compensation comparison that's been conducted. And that brings us really to now this request for a market analysis for the position of city manager. So as previously shared with you, the analysis was conducted by reaching out to the staff of 10 Valley cities, cities that we commonly use in our other market analysis comparisons. And we asked for total compensation data for the position of city manager. And that data included base salary, other compensation, which is primarily usually deferred comp, secondary retirement contributions, and also other stipends and allowances. And as noted as you can see in the table here, the way or the method in which that compensation is applied can be vastly different. So much so that when we received the initial data on several of these, we contacted more than once just to confirm the information. But at the conclusion, this was the total compensation information which we received from representatives from each of these cities. And you can see in total compensation, they're listed in descending order. One thing I'd like to note, though, is that this information was collected last month, mid-August through late August. And since that time, there's actually been a change to the compensation that's on the table here with one of the cities. And that change was an increase to the base salary. So that's actually gone up for one city compared to what's in here right at the moment. But this is the information that was put together as of the end of August. As drafted, the amendment would adjust the base salary for the city manager from $196,201 to $230,000. The amendment would also add a vehicle allowance of $500 per month, and this amendment also retains no severance terms, as in the original agreement. So as amended, this would change the total compensation for the city manager. And this table is refreshed to reflect that, again in descending order. And that's really the highlights of the information that we obtained. I'd be happy to answer any questions or follow-up.
Councilmember Hall, did you have anything further to say?
No, I just really appreciate Mark Schott's efficiency and timeliness with which he did this study. He got back to us right away, and we're able to look at this and talk about it in e-session. And but this is kind of a result of that. And so I move to approve the First Amendment to the City Manager Employment Agreement.
Second.
I think the second was from this end of the table, Councilmember Hayden. All right, a motion has been made and seconded to approve the First Amendment to the City Manager Employment Agreement as presented. I see no further questions or discussion, and so the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, now we have completed the last item on the agenda. And so I'll ask if any council member has any future agenda item that they'd like placed on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll move on to the council reports. We'll start with you, Councilmember Winters.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday morning, I attended the Constitution Day at Canyon Ridge Elementary School. And it was pretty exciting. All the 8th graders dressed up as James Madison and Paul Revere with his horse and everything. It was really great. And the other smaller children would come in and ask questions of those folks. And they really did a good job on research of the person they were impersonating. And it was a great job. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayden.
High percentage of us went to the the West Valley Cities and Towns Central Arizona Project Dinner, which discusses the water and how the tables are doing for the different lakes and what's going on and how they're going to implement different processes. So it was a very interesting meeting. We also went to, some of us went to the Willow Canyon Military Appreciation. Councilman Hall went out with a lot of other retired military, and some still in the service went out there, and it was really sort of nice to see them appreciated and awarded. Ottawa University, of course, we've been going to their games. I hope you all come out. It's really fun to watch the games and watch a team learn how to play and be involved more and grow within their own processes. And also went to the Right Choice Open House this morning to find out what's going on with the transportation and what's going to happen with the new programs for call center for the people, rather going to all the different call centers. You go directly to one call center, and how we're going to manage that, and how the people who need special rides will get their rides. And it's just a very interesting process that they've gone through to correct a real hard year of service that we had trouble giving. That's about it.
Councilmember Duffy?
Thank you, Mayor. So most of my time now outside of work is spent on soccer fields. I have two, well, one's on the disabled list. He'll be back in a few weeks. So it's more of, I just want to say thanks to the recreation department. They have, and I think Donna told me today, 190 teams with soccer and flag football.
Cool.
So you think about it, there's 17 fields on Saturday. And they stagger the times. So there's a lot of kids playing at one time. So you got people leaving, people coming in. And it's been really hot the first couple weeks, which normally it's not really as hot. So they're offering transportation from the gate out to different fields if you need it. There's water everywhere, not just for the players, but for the spectators who are there. So seeing as I'm there all the time, probably more than when I was working there, I just wanted to say, if you want it, you should go take a look at it and see how it all works with that many games going at one time, and how one recreation aide, George Lyons, comes up with all the parking direction in the parking lot. He came up with that on his own. And he actually created the position where you'll see him, he has like a crosswalk now. So it's really good to see how it's done and how they control that many people at one time. So Donna Miller, to your whole staff, I appreciate it. Thank you. And you guys should go out and take a look at it.
Thanks, Councilmember.
You got it.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things. I want to thank the Willow Canyon High School and John Williams for inviting me to Military Appreciation Night. Very nice. Did a great job. Shadow Ridge won the football game, but other than that, it was a great night. I went to the joint chiropractic grand opening, and the same people that opened the one here on Waddell own the one on Bell Road, and they told me out of the 450 operations they have in the United States, the one on Bell Road is ranked 5th out of 450 in terms of volume. So that's why they opened the one on Waddell. And so Councilman Remley was there, or Vice Mayor Remley, and Councilman Hayden was there too, so it was good. Also on Sunday, I wasn't going to, but I thought, geez, you know what? If Chris Tovar can be out there and Nate Miller can be out there, I can go out there. They did a bicycle rodeo in Target parking lot. And I'll tell you what, it was well attended. And it was 107 degrees. And that asphalt was just, poof, but the kids showed up, and it was really great. And the lady that owns the bicycle shop there in the Coles, she was there. But, our guys just do a super job. And there were more guys there too. I just remember Nate and Chris for sure. And so I want to thank them. And then I went to the Ride Choice open house this morning to meet the guys with the new company. And Councilman Hayden was there, Vice Mayor Remley was there. I think we showed that, we're really looking forward to a positive change, October 1. And then Thursday, I'm meeting with their, I don't know what his title is, Chief Operating Officer or something, on Thursday down at Valley Metro. And just to ask him questions and express our concern about some of the problems we've had in the past and how are they going to fix them. And so anyway, they've got some good references. They do, they're in Arizona. So it's not like they're coming from California to here. They already have experience in Arizona. But their main operation is in California. But anyway, so that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Councilmember Tandy?
Thanks. I went to the football game too, and it's exciting. It's kind of fun to have.
Did they win?
It was close.
Oh.
There was a last-second field goal, and it went down. But it was a fun, exciting game. And if you haven't gone to one of those games, go there. It's very affordable. You can buy season tickets for less than the cost of somebody else's ticket. So, yeah, but it's great spirit there, and that's actually their team name is Spirit. I also want to celebrate today's the 74th Air Force birthday for Luke Air Force Base is celebrating that. I'm excited about all the building that's going on in the city, even outside of District 6. Hilton Garden Inn, I looked at it just down by the stadium. It's really coming along, getting close to being done. Got some other news for those of you that know the new center that right out on Bell Road with Pyology and the chicken restaurant and the Tokyo Joe's. The news came out today that Thompson Thrift, who developed that, actually leased it up 100%. So that one vacant place is going to be a Mucho Burrito.
Is that what it's going to be?
Fresh Mexican food. And they also, the other part of that news is once they had it 100% leased up, they went ahead and successfully sold the building. So that is good opportunity, showing things are happening here in Surprise. I'm getting a lot of questions about what's going up. What's that building now going up down by the bowling alley and theater? And it's a huge building, 275,000 square feet, I believe. It's actually Trimaco. It's going to be a manufacturing facility, and they're going real fast on that. Bring a lot of good jobs here. And right next to that, we considered something on council tonight for Platt, but P&Z is going to consider a site plan later this week for another new company, manufacturing facility called Seattle Box Company. So those are all in our rail industrial center, foreign trade zone. So lots of stuff going on. There's also, believe it or not, some spec buildings that are getting approved. And we also just recently had some other buildings that were open down in that Skyway Business Park area. So just a lot of things going on. Not everybody, unless you drive by it, knows about that, but lots of fun stuff. And Cafe Rio on Waddell and Litchfield, another Mexican restaurant, fresh Mexican restaurant. And then there's one more that, right in front of the bowling alley, Filiberto's. Federico's is around the corner in District 6 also. Oh, yeah. So we're getting a lot of Mexican restaurants just recently. And I think, those were the other things on my list. So the other thing is, I was really glad to hear at the presentation made by Westmark, Central Hoffman, tonight at our work session. I had made a suggestion at our last Westmark executive board meeting last week that we focus more on office building, the gap we have here in the West Valley. And I got a lot of good feedback from the other executive team members, and they've been starting to talk it up too because I've been bringing it up. I see this as a huge opportunity for the entire West Valley. Office buildings are one of the toughest things to get funded and moving, but Westmark folks, these are business and industry people that are in the business, bankers and architects and developers, and they're talking it up. And our next meeting we're going to have is Centra just mentioned that they shuffled it around, and it's going to be a major focus of our next meeting. So I think that's going to be good for the West Valley, very good for Surprise. So I'm excited to see that going on. Thanks.
Thank you. So yes, indeed, a lot is going on, and I just was recently asked to come and, actually I'm often asked to come and speak and talk about what's going on in Surprise. And so just a couple of stats that I wanted to throw out there that to just kind of counteract some of the misinformation that's been spread around what's going on Surprise. But in the last year, there's been $113 million of capital investment, commercial capital investment in the city of Surprise. And over the last 5 years, nearly $600 million of capital commercial investment. We have grown 1.3 million square foot of commercial development, which includes new construction and TIs. And that is we've seen a 27% growth in the number of commercial permits. That's huge. That's awesome. It's kept our planning commission plenty busy, and us as well. We're so very excited about all the activity that's been going on. And I love this one. There have been more than 500 jobs added to the community just last year. 500 jobs just last year. Today, the city of Surprise community currently employs nearly 30,000 people are employed here in the city of Surprise. Do you know that about, what was it, Sherry, 10, 15 years ago? The whole population of the city of Surprise was only about 30,000 people. Yeah. So we've come a long way, and we're very excited about how much is happening. You've heard a lot tonight about transportation, and many of us are preparing to go to Washington, D.C. to speak with our representatives in DC on our transportation opportunities and to work in partnership with the federal government and with our representatives there. We'll be going towards the early part of next week. And so we'll have plenty, I'm sure, to share with one another when we get back. But again, to the point of potentially someday having a circulator bus or some sort of a pilot project, we have to continue to do our homework and reach out to our federal partners as well. Our staff has done an amazing job of reaching out and finding every single penny that's available, whether it's closeout funds at the local level. We just couldn't be prouder of all the work that our transportation and planning staff have done on our behalf. So, things are happening in Surprise, and we are all very fortunate to live here in a great city that people, more and more people are coming to live here because they recognize the quality of life they can enjoy here in the city of Surprise. So we're all very proud, and I think that pretty much concludes the reports for this evening. We do have one very brief executive session this evening. Is that correct? Okay, and so we will not be making any decisions in the executive committee meeting. We will simply be getting information from our legal counsel. And so at this time, I would like to have a motion to recess into executive session.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to recess into executive session. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We are in recess.